as also in all his epistles, speaking in them of these things, in which are some things hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable rest, as they do also the other scriptures unto their own destruction. 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 16. Shalom, this is the son of Benjamin. Welcome to my new video. And today I'm going to be doing our fourth part of the scripture breakdown series. We're going to be looking at 5 common false doctrines concerning Paul. So we're going to get right into it. So number 5 is that Paul was an antichrist or advocate of Satan. Now this one is present among Hebrew Israelites. I've seen Hebrew Israelites who will deny Paul and say that he is an antichrist, because the reason why is because most of them are like Israel only, and since Paul preaches that salvation for all nations according to Christianity, that's why they, and also his Christianity claims that he also teaches against the law, and he also teaches the Trinity and all these false doctrines. They believe that Paul actually was teaching these false doctrines. And then he also got scriptures from Paul himself, like 2 Corinthians 11 and 13 through 14. As such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the workers, apostles of Hamashiach. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. So I've even heard an argument that Paul was one of these deceitful workers, and that verse 14 is talking about what happened to him on the road of Damascus. And then they say that Paul is working for Satan. But if you look through the book of Acts, Paul was actually casting out Satan. And Christ says that Satan can't cast out Satan, because a kingdom divided by itself cannot stand. And now let's continue now. So we're going to go to number 4. Paul's words are equal to, and even sometimes usurps the Most High's words. So we're going to look at a scripture which Christians will go to, Acts 26 and 29. And Paul said, I ought to elect him that not only thou, but also all that hear me this day, who are both almost and altogether such as I am, accept these bonds. So then Christians will use the scripture, because he was talking to Agrippa, also Idumean, because he came from Herod's line. And they'll say that because Paul said this, that means that Paul wants all the other nations to be Christians like he is, and be saved like him. But if you first of all, Paul never said that he wanted to be a Christian. He just said that he wanted a Messiah and set these bonds. He never said anything about being a Christian. But if we continue, now if you look at a precept, we look at Proverbs 6 and 14. It says, the wrath of a king is as the messengers of death, but a wise man will pacify it. So here was this. So the wrath of the king is the Most High's wrath, and he says that he sent us a messenger of death, because it says, but a wise man will pacify it. Because if Paul went to Agrippa and said that you're an Idumean and the Most High hates you, then Agrippa would have had him put to death. He's not going to go and call and say and outright say that the Most High hates someone when they have the power to put him to death. So what he was doing, he was pacifying the message to Agrippa to get himself out of the situation, so he could carry on teaching the nation. Because if he was killed halfway through his ministry, then the book of Romans wouldn't exist. There's so many books that he written wouldn't exist right now. And now let's continue. So if you look at Romans 7 and 14, because Paul says, now before we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. So Paul says that he is carnal. He didn't say that he was. He didn't say that he was speaking the words of the Most High. He said that he was carnal. Now I'm not saying that Paul wasn't speaking the words of the Most High, but I'm saying that not everything that Paul says is the word of the Most High. He even says himself that he speaks as a man. So I don't know why Christians act like he's a god or something. I'll show you. And it says in 1 Corinthians 11:13, is Hamashiach divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? So Paul's using rhetorical questions to humble himself, because he's most likely been insulted by the Corinthians, and he doesn't want to be seen as a Christ, because he doesn't want to be a false Christ. A false Christ. So now let's move on to points. Let's move on to point 3. I just buffering here. So Paul taught that the heathen were co-heirs with Israel. So what that means is that Paul was teaching that everyone was all equal. Yeah, just like with John 3:16. So now, we're going to look at some verses that Christians will use to prove this, or to attempt to prove this. So Romans 9:24-33. Even us whom he has called, not the Jews only, but also the Gentiles. I'm also going to break all of these down afterwards. I'm just going to show three big blocks of scriptures that they like to use. As he said also in OC, I will call them my people which were not my people, and a beloved which was not beloved. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there shall they be called the children of the living Elohim. Isaiah also cries concerning Israel, though the number of the children of Israel be at the sand of the sea, a remnant shall be saved. For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness. For a short work will Yah make upon the earth. As Isaiah said before, except Yah your Sabo had left us a seed, we had been as Sodom and been made like unto Sodom and Gomorrah. What shall we say then? That the Gentiles which follow not after righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. But Israel which followed after the law of righteousness have not attained to the law of righteousness. Wherefore, because they saw not by faith, but as they were by the works of the law, for they stumbled at the stumbling stone. As it is written, Behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling block and a rock of offence, and whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. And then now we're going to also look at Romans 11 and 11-25. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Elohim forbid, but rather through their fall salvation is common to the Gentiles to provoke them to jealousy. For if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle to Gentiles, I magnify my office. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy, and if the root is holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou be a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and with them partakers of the root and the fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. How wilt thou say then the branches were broken off, thou may be grafted in? Or because of unbelief they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. For if Elohim spare not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee. Behold, therefore the goodness and severity of Elohim on them which fell, severity, but toward thee goodness. If thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou shalt be cut off. Thou also shalt be cut off. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for Elohim is able to graft them in again. For if thou were cut out of the olive tree which is wild by nature, and grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these which being the natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree? For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceit, that blindness in part has happened to Israel, till the forms of the Gentiles be come in. And then the final one we're going to look at is Ephesians 2:11 through 19. Wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hand. But at that time ye were without Hamashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenant of promise, having no hope without Elohim in the world. But now in Hamashiach Yahshua, ye who were sometimes far off, were made nigh by the blood of Hamashiach. For he is our peace, who hath made both one, and broken down the middle wall partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments, in containing ordinances, for to making of twain one new man, so making peace, and that he might reconcile both unto Elohim with one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby, and came and preached peace to you which were far off, and to them that were nigh. For through him we have both access by one Ruach unto the Father. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints, and the household of Elohim. So now we're going to deal with all of these precepts. So we're going to start with the one that we started with, which is Romans 9:24 through 26. So even us we will call not only the Jews but also the Gentiles. As he said also in Osee, I will call them my people which were not my people, and a beloved which were not beloved. And it shall come to pass that in the place where I said to them, ye are not my people, they shall be called the children of the living Elohim. So now Paul is quoting from the book of Hosea. So if he's quoting from Hosea 1:6 through 10. It's the end of the verse, but we'll just read it in context. So he says, and he conceived again, and bare a daughter. And Elohim said unto him, call her name Loruhamah, for I'll know mercy on the house of Israel, and I'll also take them away. So Loruhamah needs no mercy. But I'll have mercy on the house of Yahudah, and save them by Yahweh Elohim, and will not save them by bow, nor by sword, nor by battle, by horses, nor by horsemen. And when she had conceived Queen Loruhamah, she conceived and bare a son. Then said Elohim, call his name Lo-Ami, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your Elohim. So that's already showing you what happened in verse 26, where it says, ye are not my people. It says, he said right here to Hosea, who was from Israel. Hosea wasn't a Gentile, was he? He was an Israelite. So if you continue, it says, yet the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said to them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living Elohim. So this is talking about the children of Israel, which is talking about the northern kingdom of Israel. Because the northern kingdom of Israel, in the previous verse, the Most High cuts them off. But then he prophesies that they will return, and that they would be his people again. So this is the Gentiles that Paul was talking about. So now we're going to look at Romans. We're going to continue. So Romans 9:27 through 30. Isaiah also inquired concerning Israel. Wait, though the number of the children of Israel be at the sound of the sea, a remnant shall be saved. For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness, because the short work we are make upon the earth. As Isaiah said before, except Yah Sabbath, and they had left us esteemed, we've been as Sodom, and be made unlike unto Gomorrah. What shall we say then? That the Gentiles which follow not after righteousness overtake to righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. So we're going to look at where Paul is quoting this from, because Christians will just look at what he's quoting and not focus on what, and not look at where he's quoting from. So he's quoting from Isaiah chapter 10, and he starts. So then he starts at verse 22, but I'm going to obviously read it in the context. So and it shall come to pass that the remnant of Israel, and such as are escaped of the Jacob, shall no more stay upon him that smote them, but shall stay upon Yah, the Holy One of Israel, in truth. The remnant shall return, even the remnant of Jacob, unto the mighty Elohim. For though thy people Israel be as the sound of the sea, yet a remnant of them shall return. The consumption of decree shall overflow with righteousness. For Yah Elohim of hosts shall make a consumption, even determine in the midst of all the land. So again, this is talking about this. So you can tell, this is again talking about Israel return. It's not talking about. It's talking about like the remnant is talking about the 1/3 who in Zechariah 13:8 it says 2/3 be cut off, for 1/3 will remain. So this is talking about the 1/3, and that they will return to the Most High. And then if you look at verse 24, it says, therefore thus said Yah Elohim of hosts, O my people that dwelleth in Zion, be not afraid of the Assyrian. So that's talking about our oppressors. He shall smite you with a rod, and lift up his staff against you after the manner of Egypt. Before yet a little while, and their indignation shall cease, and mine anger in their destruction. So the Most High is saying that he's going to destroy the oppressors. Good, let's continue. So Romans 9:30-33. What shall we say then? That the Gentiles which followed not after righteousness have attained to righteousness, even not the righteousness which is of faith. But Israel which just followed not after the law of righteousness have not attained to the law of righteousness. Wherefore, because they sought not by faith, but as it were by works of the law, for they stumbled at that stumbling stone. As it is written, behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling block and a rock of offence, and whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. But then now we're going to look at James, because we're going to look at what faith is, because it says, what does it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith and hath not works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is to be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say to them, depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding ye give them not all those things which are needful for the body, what doth it profit? Even so, faith, if it hath not works, is dead being alone. Yea, a man may say, thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works. Thou believest that there is one Elohim, thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered Isaac his son upon the altar? So now it says, now we're going to look at how it is applied. We're going to apply to this verse now. So it says that the Gentiles did not follow the righteousness, because if you remember, the northern kingdom were cast away by the Most High, and they were not. So in this verse, it's talking about the northern kingdom of Israel. Not all scriptures concerning Gentiles talking about northern kingdom, because there are also other Israelites. There were Jews who also became Gentiles, because they were also cut off from Israel. For example, in the book of Maccabees, the Hellenized Jews became Greeks or Gentiles, because in 2 Maccabees 6:6, the Greeks outlawed proclaiming yourself to be a Jew. So if you called yourself a Jew, you would be put to death. So you have to call yourself like Greeks or Gentiles. And then if you continue, it says, but Israel, which followed not after the law of righteousness, have not attained to the law of righteousness. So this is talking about the ones that are still in Israel, because they were, so for example, like the Pharisees would claim to follow the law, but they weren't actually doing it. They didn't actually attain to the law of righteousness. because they were not trying to do it by faith. They were trying to do it by works alone. Because you can't have works alone. You have to have works with faith, which is what James says. James says that we need faith and works. We can't have faith alone. We also can't have works alone. We have to have both. And it says, as it is written, I laid aside the whole of stumbling blocks and rock of offence, and whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. This story is talking about Christ, and that's talking about how if you believe in him, that you will not be ashamed. And now let's continue. So Romans 11 and 11-14. I say to them, as they stumble that they should fall. Elohim forbid, but through their fall salvation to come into the Gentiles to convert them unto jealousy. So again, I've already talked about about the Gentiles that Paul is talking to. And then let's continue. Now if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? For I speak unto you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office. If any means I might provoke to emulate them which are my flesh, I might save some of them. Because if you're like the Hebrews, like when you see a lot of the Southern Kingdom, they hate a lot on the Northern Kingdom. They'll always be like Northern Kingdom aren't Israelites. They'll say that they're any other nation except for Israelites because they hate it, and that's what it's talking. And Paul is prophesied right here. It says that. It says that salvation for the Gentiles will provoke the Israelites through their jealousy, and then it says that Paul wanted to provoke to emulation them which are his flesh, which is talking about the Jews, and to save some of them. And then if you go to Romans 10 and 14, because this is because Paul also precepts it in his own book. He said, did not use, but I say did not use, well, no. First Moses said, I will provoke you to jealousy by them which are that no people, and by a foolish name I will anger you. So that Paul says that the Gentile he's talking about are them that are no people and a foolish nation. Well, so if you see them that are no people, now let's look at what that says. So if you look at 1 Peter 2 and 9-10, it says, but ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praise of him that called you out of the darkness into the marvelous light. So you see, that Paul is talking to Israel, because Paul is talking to Israel right here. He says that they're a chosen nation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people. When times past we're not a people, but now. But so if you look again, it says, which in time past are not a people. This says, I'll provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, but are now the people of Elohim. Now, like Christians will say that's all about the Gentiles who are not part of Israel, and that they were no people, and now didn't have mercy, and they got mercy, and that they're the chosen generation, the royal priest, and it's talking about the church. But if you see here, it says we should not attain mercy, but now attain mercy. If we look at Hosea chapter 22 and 23, it says, and I will sow her unto me in the earth, and I will have mercy upon them that have not attained mercy. And remember, the book of Hosea is talking about the northern kingdom of Israel. And I will say to them which are not my people, thou art my people, and they shall say, thou art my Elohim. So if you see again, Paul, this is all. If you put it together, Paul is talking to the northern kingdom of Israel right here. If you connect the dots, let's continue. So, for the casting away of them be of the reconciling for what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy, and if the root be holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches were broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and the fatness of the olive tree, Now, first of all, we're going to look at the olive trees. So, because Christians will say that there's a wild olive tree, especially the Gentile Christians will say there's the olive tree, the wild olive tree. Now, the olive tree is Israel, and the wild, because they don't know what this means, because this is talking about the wild olive tree being the ones that were cut off, because the Northern Kingdom became a wild idolatry when they were committing idolatry. They cut them off from the Commonwealth of Israel, and also there were also obviously Jews who also did this as well. Also cut off like in the Maccabean period, and they're also going to look at the root. It says that if would the first fruit be holy, the lump also is also holy. If the root be holy, so are the branches. Now the root is Abraham, because that's where Christ is the root of Abraham. Remember, the Most High says to Abraham, "In thy seed all the families of the earth be blessed," and the seed is Christ. Boast not against the branch, but thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Thou will say then that the branches were broken, that thou may be grafted in. So what that says that the branches were broken, that thou may be grafted in. So this is talking about people. This is just talking about like those that are high-minded. Will say that they were special because they got grafted. Because they were grafted in, but the Southern Kingdom weren't. But we're also gonna look at John 8:39, because this talks about the root. So it says to them, "Abraham is our father." They answered and said unto him, "Abraham is our father." Yahshua said unto them, "If you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham." So Christ says that if you are Abraham's seed, you will do the works of Abraham. Now we're going to see what the works of Abraham is, because Christians will say that's talking about faith. 2 Ezra chapter 3 verse 15 through 16. And made an everlasting covenant with him, promising that he will never forsake his seed. And unto him thou gavest Isaac, and unto Isaac thou gavest Jacob and Esau, and as for Jacob, thou did choose unto him and put thy Esau, so Jacob became a great multitude. So it says that Ezra chose Jacob instead of Esau. Jacob was the one that he chose to give the covenant, and you can also precept that in Romans 9:4. And we're also going to look at Sirach or Ecclesiasticus chapter 44 and 19 through 20. Abraham was a great father of many people, and glory was there none like unto him. Now here's the important. Here's where you can see the works of Abraham, right there, who kept the law of the Most High, and was in covenant with him. He established the covenant in the flesh. When he was proved, he found faithful. So he said that Abraham kept the law. And because he kept the law of him, the covenant was made by him, and he established a covenant and was found faithful because he kept the law of the Most High. So what is saying that? So all these Christians who are claiming that they follow Jesus, but then they're going around eating pork willingly, or going around celebrating the Christmas. They're not keeping the laws of the Most High. The Most High says not to do that in scriptures like Jeremiah 10:2 and Leviticus 11. They're transgressing the law right there. And then they think that they're in faith. But I showed you before in James 2, faith without works is dead. And Revelation 14:12 says it as well. And then let's continue. So Romans chapter 10, 11 and 20, Romans 11 and 25. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. For he spare not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee. Behold, therefore the goodness and severity of Elohim on them which fell. Severity, but towards thee goodness. Thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou shalt be cut off. Also be cut off. And they also which abide not still in unbelief shall be grafted in. Well, Elohim is able to graft them in again. For thou but if thou were cut off of the olive tree which was wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into the good olive tree, how much more shall these which be the natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree? For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, yet lest ye should be wise in your own conceit, that blindness and fire happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be coming. So now, it says here it is. So I didn't include a verse after, but last time I quoted precept there, but I'll quote it now because I didn't quote it before because I wanted to use it in my breakdown, because this pretty much destroys the Christian line that it's talking about the heathen. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion and turn away ungodliness from Jacob. So you see, and so Paul will say that, and so all Israel shall be saved. Paul literally tells you who he's talking about. He's talking about the Israelites who are cut off. Because the two wild olive trees are the ones, the natural branches are the ones who are believing and keeping the law. And then the wild ones are the ones that do not believe and not keeping the law. And then if you look at Ezekiel chapter 36, 37 and 16 to 22, this is actually what, because this is actually what the verse is applying to. This says it's the same, pretty much the same thing as what Romans says. Moreover, thou son of man, take thee 2 sticks, make thee. Sorry, let me just pause. And write upon it, for Yehuda and for the children of Israel his companions, they take another stick and write upon it, for Joseph the stick of Ephraim and all the house of Israel his companions. And join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. So this is what the gardening is talking about. It's not talking about everyone all coming together. It's talking about Christ bringing Israel back together. Because the Most High is not going to hate the northern kingdom so much, hey, just going to cast them off and never bring them, and never leave them there forever. Because the Most High is wise. The Most High is merciful, and he says that himself that they would attain mercy in Hosea. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, What wilt thou not show us what thou meanest by these? Say unto them, Thus says Yahweh Elohim, Behold, I'll take the stick of Joseph which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel his fellows, and I'll put them with him, even with the stick of Yehuda, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. So you see what it's talking about? It's talking about that again, Israel and Judah would become one again. This is what grafting is talking about. And the sticks whereon thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes. And say unto them, Thus says Yahweh Elohim, Behold, I'll take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And I'll make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all, and they shall be no more 2 nations, neither shall they be divided into 2 kingdoms any more at all. So you see, the one king is obviously Christ. It says that they shall be no more 2 nations, because they'll become one nation. Let's continue. So we're going to look at Ephesians 2:11-13. Wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at that time you were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without Elohim in the world. But now in the Mashiach Yahshua, ye were sometimes far off from me, now by the blood of Mashiach. So we're going to look at 1 Maccabees 1:48. That they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable, all men unclean and profanation. So this is what the Gentiles in the flesh are. These are the uncircumcised. Now it's no longer talking about uncircumcised in the flesh now. It's talking about the Israelites who are uncircumcised in the heart or in the mind. Because Paul to be uncircumcised and to be circumcised in the heart and mind is the key. Is to have your mind on the law and be doing the law. Because Paul says circumcision is nothing, uncircumcision is nothing, but it's the keeping of the commandments of Elohim. And if we look at John 1:11 of 49-52. And one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest, said unto them, Ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. Now, this is this high priest. Obviously, in any other scenario, I wouldn't quote what he says. But since it's saying this spake not of himself, but being high priest, that he prophesied. So he was prophesying that Yahshua should die for that nation. So this nation was talking about Judea. Then it says, and for not that nation only, but that also we should gather together in one the children of Eli that was scattered abroad. This is who he's talking about. And if you precept in, James 1:1, which I forgot to include, it says James is he introduced himself, and then after he says that he's writing it to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. Now let's continue. So Ephesians 2:14-16. For he is our peace, who have made both one and broken down the middle wall partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandment containing ordinances, to make in himself of twain one new man, so making peace, that he might reconcile both unto Elohim in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby, and came and preached peace to you which are afar off, and to them that were nigh. For through him we both have one access. We both have access by one rock unto the Father. And now ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints, with the household of Elohim. Okay, so now, first of all, it says he is our peace, who have made both one and broken down the middle wall partition between us. And I just showed you, that's all. Ezekiel 37 says that, because Ezekiel, the Most High prophesied for Ezekiel that Christ would break down the middle of the wall partition, and that the two sticks would become one, because he abolished in his flesh the enmity and the law and commands that contain ordinances. So what that says is that the laws against the laws of Israel being cut off. The laws saying that Israel will be cut off from the Most High's people. It was abolished by Christ, so that he could make himself of two one new man. This is the two which is also referenced to the two sticks. Because pretty much all these are referred to the two sticks becoming one, that he might reconcile both unto Elohim in one body by the cross. So it says he might reconcile. So this talking about, you can't reconcile with someone who you never knew. And if you look at Amos 3:2, Christ, the Most High, says that he only knew Israel. You can't just go to a stranger and reconcile with them. And it says, and he came and preached peace to you which were far from that one, and to them which were nigh. For through him we both have access by one blood into the Father, and therefore you know what stranger and foreign fellowship with the saints in the house of our Elohim. So, and also, if we look at this verse, a lot of it's talk. It says that, just like if you look at the previous verse, It says that the strangers, it said that the Gentiles in the flesh were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, estranged from the covenant of promise, having no hope of our enemy in the world. Now this is the heathen might say talking about them, but if you actually look in the Old Testament, it's not talking about them because they are given promises. They even are given the promise of salvation in scriptures like Isaiah chapter 56 from 3 through 8, and it also says that not to let the stranger say that the Lord has separated me from his people. So this is not talking about the heathen, because the heathen who join themselves to the Lord are not separated from his people. It's talking about those who were of Israel who were separated from his people. And then for the last one, for the second to last, Paul was teaching the heathen. Now what I mean by that, I'm not saying that Paul never taught the heathen, because that would be an assumption, because I was never walking around Paul just checking everyone's nationality. But what I mean is that Paul wasn't going out of his way to just go to heathen and teach them. He was teaching to his people. A lot of the time it says that he teaches the Gentiles. Now I've already showed you in several scriptures who the Gentiles are. But we're still going to continue. If you look at Matthew chapter 28, if you look at Matthew chapter 28:19, it says, "Go there, ye therefore, and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Ruach Kodesh." And then that's just a Christian use of scriptures to justify their claim. No, but this is talking about, but if you remember, in several scriptures in the Old Testament, it prophesies that Israel would be among all nations. If you look at Acts 2, it says that there were Jews out of every nation. But we're going to continue, so if you look at Matthew 10:6, it says, "But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So Christ says, because in the verse before that, Christ says, not to go to any, just only go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. If you look at Hebrews 13:8, Yahshua Mashiach is the same yesterday and today and forever. So if you look at that, it says that Christ never doesn't change. Like the Most High Malachi 3:6, he doesn't change either. Christ doesn't change. And then if you look at Acts 25:8, Paul says, while he answered for himself, neither against the Lord the Jews, neither against the temples, nor against Caesar have offended in anything at all. So Paul says that he kept that he didn't break any law, and he said neither against the law of the Jews. Now if you look at Acts 10, Peter says something interesting. Because Peter says that that wasn't lawful, and I'm not sure if this was written. I don't think that this was a law written, but well, rather that this was man-made. But it said that that was not lawful for one that was a Jew to come into company to one of another nation. Now, that's interesting because Paul said that he didn't break any of the law of the Jews. And Peter says that the law of the Jews that they were not allowed to come to the other nations. And now you can't look at the rest of what Peter says, but Peter's saying that wouldn't change what the Pharaoh wouldn't change the law what the priest made, because Peter didn't make the law himself. So if Peter followed that law, that would mean that he wouldn't be going to the other nations. He'd be going to his own people. But let's continue. So the last one, Paul was teaching against the law. This one's a big one. There are many scriptures I could go to, which Christians love to Paul to prove this claim. But I don't want this video to be any longer, and it shouldn't need to be, because I went very far on the third. I went very long on the third point. Well, look at Romans 3:31. Do we then make void the law through faith? Heaven forbid, yea, we establish the law. Now, because previous to this, Paul was talking about faith, and then Christians will always use the scriptures that Paul talks about in faith, but then they'll completely ignore the scriptures at the end, which is this one. It says we don't make the law, we don't cancel out the law through faith, we establish the law. And let's keep, and also if we read Acts 21 and 20-24, and when they heard it, they glorified Yah and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law, and they are fond of thee that thou teachest all the Jews which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither walk in the circumcision. Now obviously Paul wasn't saying it, but that's what the people who were like haters, were saying. They'll be like, oh, Paul's saying this, Paul's saying that, because they want Paul in trouble. They want him to lose popularity. The best way to do that is by saying that he's teaching against what they've been taught to believe their entire lives. Let's continue. What is it therefore? The multitude must needs come together, for they will hear that thou art come. Do this therefore that we say unto you. We have 4 men that have a vow on them. So most likely they were Nazarites, and they had taken the Nazarite vow. Them take and purify themselves with them, and be at charge with them, that they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing. So if you look at verse 21 again, it said that Paul teach all the Jews who want to Gentiles of St. Moses, which talk about the law. It says that the Jews he was being accused of teaching against the law, and then again when you read on at verse 24, it says all these things that whereof they were full concerned are nothing, so they were false. So Paul was not teaching against the law, and if you read on, it says, but that thou thyself also walkest orderly and keepest the law. So Paul was keeping the law. He wasn't saying you can break the law, you can go eat pig, you can go celebrate Christmas. No, he was teaching that you have to follow the law and have faith in Christ, because you need both of them. You can't have one or the other. So this is son of Benjamin. Again, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and also leave a comment so I know what your thoughts of the video are. Thank you for watching. Shalom.